Hello everyone, my name is Sarah and today we're going to learn about how zebras got their stripes. So, any of you guys animal lovers out there? Any of you guys perhaps into fashion? Alright, well then, if you like either of those things, you've likely seen and are familiar with the stripes on zebras. So, I was always curious before I was doing the research for this article. How is it that zebras are striped in the first place? Because it's a pretty unique trait among animals, especially in the African savanna. So today, we're going to find out together. All right, you ready? Among the relatively neutral colorings of savanna animals, such as lions, elephants, and rhinoceroses, the zebra, with his bold black and white coat, stands out from the pack. So this color neutral, basically it means something that's not too bright. So for instance, a lion, it's kind of a beige color. Elephants are usually gray, and it's the same thing for rhinoceroses. However, zebras are the opposite of neutral. They are boldly colored in black and white. And because of this, they stand out from the pack. So this is kind of a relatively common expression used in English. Literally, it can be an animal that stands out from a pack of other animals. Or you could also say this in kind of a figurative way. So for instance, if there is a student in a class who speaks extra good English, you could say that that student stands out from the pack, or he stands out from his classmates. And the second word that I have bolded here is the word savanna. So savanna, it's a common name in the United States and many other English-speaking countries, but it's also a word that describes a particular type of climate, particularly in Africa. So places where lions and giraffes and elephants and zebras live, you could call that place a savanna. So typically it's very flat. It has a lot of grass, not very many trees, and it's kind of like dry and hot. So that is a savanna. So yeah, so we got lions, we got elephants, we got rhinoceroses. They're all relatively neutral in their colors. So what's going on with the zebras? Why are they so, bold and just standing out from the pack? From zoologists to fashion designers, the zebra's signature stripes have been an object of fascination for centuries. But why are zebras black and white and striped all over in the first place? So, like I said before, the zebras, obviously, they have black and white stripes, and this makes them unique, especially among animals in the African savanna region. So, if you saw zebra stripes, even if it was just the stripes, you didn't even see the animal, almost immediately you would recognize, like, oh, these are zebra stripes. They're not, tiger stripes. They're not a different type of stripes. These are zebra stripes. So when something becomes so iconic and so recognizable to a certain thing or person, you can say that it's signature. So in English so in the United States, when you have to fill out some kind of official documentation, when you go to the bank, when you get a new phone, when you apply for a passport, usually you have to sign your signature, right? So your signature, it's unique and special just to you. And if people see it, they know, oh, Sarah wrote this, or Harry wrote this, etc. Same thing with zebra stripes. So because the stripes are so commonly associated with the zebra, and because they're so well known, we can say that the zebra's stripes are their signature stripes. So, for instance, a leopard, which is a mammal with a large cat with spots, you could say the leopard's signature spots, just like that. So everybody knows about zebra stripes, right? And lots of people are very curious or fascinated with these stripes, from zoologists to fashion designers. So zoologists, these are people that study animals. So zoo, this means animals, and then logist or logic, it means the study of. So I think maybe in Korean you could say this is like 동물학. So it's a type of biology that specifically studies animals. And so to the zoologists and to the fashion designers, the zebra's stripes have been an object of fascination. So this is also a commonly used English expression. So an object of fascination, it means something that a lot of people are interested in. So okay, so we know about the stripes, we know what they look like, we know that they're the signature look for the zebra, we know who is interested in them, but why do these stripes exist? Why are zebras black and white and striped all over in the first place? So this phrase here in the quotation marks, this is also a phrase that is used pretty often when talking about zebras in English. I believe that it's part of a classic knock-knock joke, and that's kind of how it became so intertwined with zebras. But yes, you don't have to memorize this. It's just, if you're talking about zebras, then you might want to use this phrase. For decades, scientists hypothesized that the stripes might offer a form of camouflage to the pack animals. However, this can be easily debunked by anyone who has seen a zebra in their natural habitat. So if you've been watching my science videos, then you know that the word hypothesis in Korean is 가설. So if you want to turn the word 가설 into a verb, you can say hypothesize. Hypothesize. So the scientists made an educated guess. They thought, maybe this is true, that the stripes might offer a form of camouflage. So do you know what camouflage is? All right, well, in the United States, when people go hunting, they go, shoot animals for sport or for food. Often they'll wear special clothes. It looks like they're covered in leaves and sticks, so they blend in to the background. So this would be called camouflage. And also soldiers also wear camouflage, especially people in the army, and they do this so that they cannot be seen easily from afar. So people do this in order to protect themselves, and animals also do the exact same thing. So if you know the animal, the chameleon will change its color to match its background as a form of camouflage to protect itself from predators. So it's possible, or at least the scientists hypothesized, or they thought so, that the stripes might offer a form of camouflage to the pack animals. But when you think about it, this doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense. Because if we look here, see, this is the savannah, these are the zebras. You can see it. You can see the zebras super well. They do not blend into the background. You can see them from very far away. I assume if I can see them, probably a lion or another animal that might want to, eat a zebra for lunch would also be able to see it. So that's why this theory has been debunked or proven wrong. The boldly striped animals stand in stark contrast to their relatively monochrome surroundings. So when something stands in stark contrast, that means it's basically another way of saying that it stands out from the pack, or it stands out from the background. So for instance, if there are 10 musicians in a room and 9 of the musicians are all playing, traditional 가야금, like very classic, very, relaxing music, and then one guy, he's playing an electric guitar, obviously that person is going to be pretty different from everyone else, and you could say that they stand in stark contrast to the people around them, because all the attention is focused on them, because what they're doing or what they look like is very different from what other people around them are doing. So we can say that the zebras stand in stark contrast to the relatively monochrome or single-colored surroundings. So mono, this means one, and then chrome, that means color. So one color. That's all I have to do to remember. So the scientists, they hypothesized that the stripes offered a form of camouflage so that the animals can blend into the background. But as you see right here, that doesn't seem so likely, because the zebras stand in stark contrast, or they stand out from the background, which is relatively monochrome or just one color. So what other purpose could they possibly have? Other researchers have suggested that the stripes could have a thermoregulatory function. This, too, is in doubt. So, this word, it's very long. I know it looks really hard, but actually when you break it into its individual parts, it's not that difficult. So, what is this word right here? Thermal. That means temperature, right? Or 온도계. And then regulatory. This is basically the adjective form of to regulate or to manage. So the researchers have suggested that the stripes could help the animals regulate their temperature, or that the stripes have a thermoregulatory function. However, this too is in doubt. That means that a lot of people don't think that this is necessarily a good explanation either. Well, how do they know that? Experiments that tested temperature changes in striped and plain barrels of water show that the stripes did not affect the cooling speed of the contents. So some researchers suggested or hypothesized that perhaps the stripes have a thermoregulatory function. So, okay, if that could potentially make sense if you think about it, maybe the white, it reflects some of the light away, and then so less heat is absorbed overall. It's possible, right? So some scientists did an experiment to test whether or not this is actually true in reality. They took 2 big jugs of water that were the exact same temperature. One of the jugs was covered in stripes, like a zebra, and the other jug had no stripes. But they found that the stripes did not affect the cooling speed of the contents. So even if the jug had stripes on it, or if it didn't have stripes on it, it didn't really have a thermoregulatory function, at least for the jugs. So it looks like this theory is not really such a great explanation either. So what is it? What could it possibly be? Why is it so difficult to ascertain or to figure out why it is that zebras have stripes? More recently, scientists have settled upon an alternative theory. Anecdotal evidence and experiments have shown that flies and mosquitoes tend to avoid landing on surfaces covered in stripes. So, this could potentially be very interesting, right? So, we mentioned earlier that the scientists had 2 hypotheses. This is the plural form of hypothesis. So they hypothesized that the stripe might be for camouflage, so that the animals don't stand out from their background. But we don't really think that's true. And then other researchers suggested that the stripes could have a thermoregulatory function. But we found out, because of this experiment, that... So, finally, scientists have settled upon or agreed about an alternative theory. Anecdotal evidence shows that flies and mosquitoes avoid landing on surfaces covered in stripes. Anecdotal evidence, this is a word that means, things that people can observe in their daily life. So for instance, so some of you remember the honey butter chip kind of craze that was going through Korea a few years ago? Well, if someone went to a 7-Eleven or a convenience store at that time and found that, oh gosh, my neighborhood 7-Eleven has absolutely no honey butter chips because they're all out, you could say that that is anecdotal evidence that honey butter chips are really, really popular. So anecdotal evidence, it basically means it's not really official scientific evidence, but it's something that you can see just by looking around in your everyday life. Of course, sometimes appearances can be deceiving because all of us we live in unique situations and environments that might not be representative of the world at large. But anecdotal evidence can often serve a purpose for conducting an experiment and finding out if that anecdote or that anecdotal evidence is true for the rest of society. So anecdotal evidence and experiments have shown that flies and mosquitoes avoid landing on stripes. So let's think about it. So where do zebras live? They live in the African savannas, right? And in Africa, there is a pretty big problem of flies and mosquitoes carrying diseases, and they get animals sick, they get people sick. It's a big problem. In some parts of the rest of the world, it's also a problem, but especially in the areas where zebras live, it's a pretty big problem because they're close to the equator. So the flies and the mosquitoes, there's so many of them, and the more flies and mosquitoes that there are, the more animals and people can get sick from the diseases that they carry. So if you think about it, it actually makes sense that potentially these zebras, they evolved through evolution, or 진화 in Korean, to develop stripes that would prevent them from getting sick from the flies and mosquitoes. This is a pretty interesting theory, right? It's not really something I would have thought of on my own, but I thought it was pretty cool. Considering that the areas of Africa where zebras traditionally reside are also home to several species of horseflies and tsetse flies that transmit deadly disease, these stripes may well be more of a Darwinian adaptation than a fashion statement. So it's a little bit of a long sentence, so I'll break it down for you. So as I just said, we thought about, where do zebras live, right? We said that they live in the African savanna. So this is near the equator and is a place where a lot of species of horseflies and tsetse flies live. So horseflies, those are like the really, really big flies that'll land on your arm and they'll sting you. It hurts horribly. When I was a kid and I lived in Maine has a lot of horseflies near where I used to live. So I would get bit by them all the time. It hurt, it would itch. It was no good. Fortunately, I never got, ill from it, but it is possible. So horseflies and tsetse flies can transmit deadly disease, such as malaria and other illnesses. Therefore, it's possible that the zebra's stripes are a Darwinian adaptation. So Darwinian, you guys know Charles Darwin, right? So Charles Darwin, he came up with the theory of evolution, which is that species will evolve or change over time in order to fit to their environment and to increase their chances of survival so that they can make more of that type of animal, whether it be zebras, humans, turtles, bacteria, etc. So when we call something a Darwinian adaptation, that means something that changed about the animal due to the theory or the process of evolution. So we talked about a couple of other theories as to why zebras might have stripes, right? We said at first that the stripes could be a form of camouflage, but then, we looked at this photo and we saw, that's probably not the case. And then secondly, we said that the stripes could potentially have a thermoregulatory function. But after this experiment was done, we found out that that is also very unlikely the case. However, after looking at some anecdotal evidence or experiments, some researchers have come to the conclusion that the stripes are a Darwinian adaptation. And they're more of an adaptation than just a fashion statement. So this is kind of it's a little bit of a joke. So obviously zebras don't wear clothes. They can't really participate in fashion actually. But basically what I'm trying to say here is the stripes, they're not just there to look good. They actually have a special purpose that helps the zebras to survive and to stay healthy. The stripes did not have to be homegrown in order to be effective. Some farmers have started covering their cows and horses with zebra stripe blankets in order to prevent disease, so far with positive results. So this is very good news for people like me who get eaten up by mosquitoes every single summer. So earlier we said that flies and mosquitoes tend to avoid landing on surfaces covered in stripes. We don't know why this is, but it does appear to be true after doing some experiments and trials in a lab. So the great thing is that you don't actually have to be a zebra in order to use this to your benefit. You can simply wear clothes, or in the case of cows and horses, put on a zebra striped blanket, and just doing that will prevent the flies and mosquitoes from landing on you. So maybe this summer I should get some more black and white striped clothes, and maybe that'll help me prevent getting bitten by mosquitoes. Wow, so today we learned about something that I have been curious about ever since I was a little kid. I hope that this was fun and educational for you. I definitely learned a lot while I was writing this article and while I was preparing this presentation. So I hope that you all enjoyed it as well. All right, well, that is all for today's lesson, and I will see you again next week. All right, bye.